At the partners' meeting, they presented the restructuring. My role, the one I'd built over 18 years, was absorbed. My mentor, Gerald, said, "Claire, your contributions are foundational, but the future is digital." I was offered a quiet advisory role or a severance. They expected tears, please. I said nothing for a full minute, then nodded. I understand. I took the severance. For 3 years, I was silent. No LinkedIn updates, no industry gossip. Yesterday, my biotech startup, built on the research they deemed non-core, secured Series B funding at a valuation that eclipses their entire firm. My phone started ringing. I didn't answer. Hello. Welcome to Hurt Stories. There is a power in silence that loud, impatient people can never comprehend. It is not the silence of emptiness. It is the silence of deep water, of gathering force, of a seed in the dark earth. My name is Claire Ashton, and for 18 years, I was the quiet, indispensable heart of Hollinger and Strauss, a venerable pharmaceutical research firm. I was the one who could read a failed clinical trial report and see the ghost of a promising side effect. I was the pattern finder, the intuitive scientist in a world increasingly ruled by algorithms and loud, charismatic salesmen masquerading as visionaries. My mentor, Gerald Hollinger, grandson of the founder, had always protected my unique way of working. He called me his secret weapon. But when Gerald retired, the wolves he'd kept at bay descended. The new CEO, a man named David Thorne from a management consultancy, spoke in PowerPoint. He saw my deep, niche research into neurodegenerative pathways not as a potential goldmine, but as a cost center with a protracted horizon. I was an artist, in a factory being retooled for mass production. The meeting was a masterpiece of corporate theater. David, flanked by the new, young digital strategy team he'd imported, presented the forward vision. Holograms and buzzwords. Synergy, pivot, agile frameworks. My department, Long Horizon Therapeutic Research, was a blob on a slide that got dissolved into a larger, more efficient unit. Then Gerald's nephew, Peter, who I'd trained myself, spoke. "Claire, we have immense gratitude for your historic work, but the market is demanding speed. Your meticulous approach, while thorough, is out of step. We're integrating your findings into our new AI-driven discovery platform." He meant they were data mining my life's work to feed an algorithm they didn't understand. The offer was a velvet coffin, a senior fellow title, an office with no staff, no budget, and no direct reports, a graceful exit into irrelevance, or a generous severance package with a standard non-compete. They all looked at me. David wore a smile of benign pity. Peter couldn't meet my eyes. They expected emotion, a defense of my work, perhaps tears. They were prepared to handle hysteria, to be the calm, rational men managing a difficult transition. I let the silence stretch. I let it become uncomfortable. I watched a fly buzz against the sealed window of the 40th floor conference room. I absorbed the entire tableau, their expectant faces, the cold sheen of the table, the distant hum of the city below. I was not in that room. I was already far away in a future they couldn't envision. I finally nodded, a single, slow dip of my chin. "I understand," I said, my voice perfectly calm, devoid of tremor. "The severance, please." The shock was subtle but palpable. They'd prepared for a fight, not a surrender. My silence, my immediate acquiescence, disarmed them completely. David recovered quickly, his smile turning triumphant. "A wise and dignified choice, Claire. We'll have HR draw up the papers." That was the moment my strategy crystallized. They mistook my silence for defeat. They mistook my lack of protest for agreement. What it was a strategic withdrawal, a total, calculated radio silence. I honored the non-compete to the letter. For 3 years, I disappeared. I deleted my LinkedIn. I did not attend conferences. I let my industry contacts assume I'd retired to garden or travel. The few colleagues who reached out received pleasant, vague replies about exploring new interests. I became a ghost in the ecosystem I'd helped build. But in the quiet, I was building a new universe. The severance package was substantial. I used it to fund a private lab, a modest space in an unmarked building. The research they had deemed non-core, my painstaking work on a particular mitochondrial repair pathway for Parkinson's, was my sole focus. Without corporate oversight, without quarterly review pressures, I could follow the science wherever it led, no matter how unconventional. I hired not superstar academics, but two brilliant, overlooked researchers who'd been cast aside by the same short-term thinking that had dismissed me. We worked in silence. No press releases. No patent filings that would tip our hand. Just deep, fundamental science. My years at Hollinger had given me more than research. They'd given me an intimate map of the industry's weaknesses, its regulatory blind spots, and most importantly, its intellectual property landscape. I designed our approach not just for scientific success, but to navigate around the thickets of patents held by my former employer and their rivals. The breakthrough was quiet, but monumental. We didn't just find a potential therapy, we discovered a novel delivery mechanism that made it exponentially more effective. It was the key that unlocked the door I'd been trying to open for 2 decades. When the non-compete expired, I did not emerge with a bang. I emerged with a perfectly formed entity. Ashton Biologics didn't seek attention. It attracted it by virtue of being an undeniable fact. I filed a monolithic, ironclad suite of international patents. Then, and only then, I published a single, dense, peer-reviewed paper in the most prestigious journal in the field. It sent shockwaves through the insular world of neurology research. The phone started ringing. Journalists, venture capitalists, big pharma, and of course, Hollinger and Strauss. David Thorne himself left a message, his voice straining for its old paternalistic warmth. "Claire, my God, what an astonishing read. We always knew you had it in you. We should really talk about how Hollinger can be a part of this incredible journey." I didn't answer. I hired a steely-eyed former federal prosecutor as my CEO. She handled the onslaught. We accepted a Series B funding round from a consortium of investors who valued long-term vision. The valuation, when it was leaked, was a number that made industry headlines. It was also, I noted with no small amount of quiet satisfaction, precisely double the market capitalization of Hollinger and Strauss. My silence had been the space in which I built my answer. It was the quiet that allowed me to hear my own scientific intuition again, without the static of their doubt. It was the strategic retreat that allowed for a total, unstoppable advance. I did not need to confront them. I did not need to sue them or shame them. My success itself was the revenge. It was the living, breathing, multi-billion-dollar proof that they had been profoundly, catastrophically wrong. They had looked at a deep, slow river and called it stagnant, only to discover, too late, that it had been carving a canyon the whole time. Peter, my former protégé, sent a handwritten note. "You were right. I am so sorry. I was an idiot." I did not reply. His regret was his to live with. It was no longer my burden to absolve. My silence was the most powerful weapon I ever wielded. It confused them. It disarmed them, and it gave me the cover to execute a plan with the precision of a master craftsman. They wanted noise, drama, a story they could manage and contain. I gave them nothing but a void. And from that void, I returned not with a louder shout, but with a new reality so solid, so formidable, that their old world now looked small and fragile beside it. The greatest revenge is not schadenfreude. It's transcendence. It's building a skyscraper so tall on the vacant lot they gave you that it permanently casts their own building in shadow. They offered me a quiet exit. I took it. And from that silence, I built a roar that will echo for generations, in the form of treatments that might heal, and a legacy that is unequivocally and finally my own. My silence was my strategy. My success was my revenge. and the view from here is profoundly, magnificently quiet. Thanks for listening. If you want to hear more story like this, please like the video and subscribe the channel. Hit the bell icon to get notified.